Hi, I'm Andre Williams, and I support Black mediocrity. Some of you may be confused, so I'll say it again. My name is Andre Williams, and I support Black mediocrity. I want you to take a moment to digest what that means. Typically, as I state my support for Black mediocrity, I'm met with confused stares of people trying to figure out what I mean. That confusion is usually then followed by backlash. Why would you say something like that? Why Black mediocrity? You just want to be lazy. Alongside these retaliations come numerous other assumptions, criticisms, and unfounded proclamations about my work ethic and character. But I mean exactly what I've said. I support Black mediocrity. I want to share with you a short story about how my support for Black mediocrity evolved. I've always supported the idea, but it was actually earlier last year that I was scrolling through Twitter and I came across a viral tweet that helped encapsulate my thoughts into a few words. The tweet read, "I support Black mediocrity. We don't have to be excellent all the time. Can we just be, damn it?" After reading the tweet, I immediately empathized with the frustration and pressure of excellence as a standard. More so, I thought about how excellence only seems to be an expectation placed on Black people. We're not allowed to make mistakes. We're not allowed to explore our interest. We're not allowed to even just be, because we're forced to strive for some arbitrary measure of excellence at all times. I remember being a kid and being told that I would have to work twice as hard, to be twice as good, only to later then receive half the recognition and half the success. Every other Black person I know has had a similar conversation with their parents or mentors. This is something that's just been accepted. Studies show that no matter the education level, Black people tend to make less than their white counterparts in the workplace. A 2019 survey by the U.S. Census Bureau over mean earnings showed that while Black bachelor's degree earners made a mean income of $60,400 or around $60,000, white bachelor's degree earners earned a mean income of around $80,000, almost a $20,000 difference. These discrepancies exist at every educational level, from those without a high school diploma to those who have earned professional degrees. And we have to ask ourselves why. Then I began to think about how Black people are constantly subjected to anti-Black violence in the form of hypercriticism. This hypercriticism is seen every day at work and at school when we're forced to walk on eggshells, scared to make mistakes because we know our every move is being analyzed and dissected for wrongdoings. This hypercriticism is seen in celebrity culture, where the dehumanization and commodification of Black celebrities runs rampant. This hypercriticism is seen in the media and by police when they do deep dive background hunts for a reason to use as justification for why a Black person was murdered by a trigger-happy, racially bigoted police officer. Take George Floyd, for example. He was an unarmed Black man wrongly accused of using a counterfeit $20 bill who made pleas for his life while an officer kneeled on his neck for more than 8 minutes, ultimately resulting in his execution via strangulation. Though on video for the world to see, many people and news networks still question whether police were justified in their use of excessive force because of Floyd's past criminal history and experience with drug abuse. Or what about Breonna Taylor? She was a young Black woman murdered in her home by police officers serving a no-knock warrant. Still, even in death, police efforts to defame her character persisted, with attempts to tie her back to a case involving drug dealing. A Tatiana Jefferson, Bodum Jean, Ahmaud Arbery, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, and so many others share in having posthumous smear campaigns run against them. Even in death, there's no justice, no peace, no leniency, no humanity afforded to Black people. It's not lost on me how starkly different the interactions with white victims, or better yet, white perpetrators of violence is. And it's not something that you should dismiss or ignore either. We have to ask ourselves why. Why the life of a Black man was worth $20. we have to ask ourselves how. How a black woman can get killed in her own home by police. And we have to think about when police buy Dylan Roof, someone who had just murdered 9 people, a hamburger. And we have to think about when our former president, Donald Trump, said that there are fine people on both sides when referring to white nationalists. And we also have to think about when Brock Turner, a white rapist, is handed a lenient sentence because he has a promising future. And even more recently, we have to think about when a police officer is seen gently guiding a woman down steps who moments ago participated in a storming of the Capitol, an attempt to overthrow the US government. And when we think about these instances and how they show the most basic level of humanity extended to not only the most mediocre white people, but arguably some who represent the worst the world has to offer, then we truly see that the only prerequisite is whiteness. If you have that, you get access to humanity. And when you don't, well, we know. So when I say and emphasize that I support black mediocrity, it's because white people get to be mediocre all the time. They're allowed to exist, to just be. Black people are always told that we're not good enough. No matter what we do, we're always asked to do more and be more. We're not allowed to fail. We're not allowed to have bad days. We're not allowed to be average. When interacting in a system that fails to recognize your basic humanity unless seen as an extraordinary exception to blackness, your very survival is contingent on being without flaw. And we must call it what it is: white supremacy. Because who defines mediocrity anyway? Due to how whiteness is centered in our culture, black people are forced to conform to white standards in order not to be seen as mediocre. Your blackness is praised only when it does not pose a threat to or disrupt whiteness. In other words, you're valued based on your ability to emulate whiteness. As such, when one's ambitions defy the norm, you're seen as less than, less human. When whiteness is placed on a pedestal as something beyond reproach, making the bare minimum acceptable as long as it's white, we get what we discussed earlier: unequal and unattainable standards for black people. Black people are expected to do it all perfectly and without help. This is an idea that's further emphasized in the college admissions process. I want you to think about the difference in how people discuss legacy admissions versus affirmative action. Legacy admissions are largely white, simply because of the racist exclusionary past of the education system. Different sources have different numbers, but generally, they say that between 80 and 90% of legacy admissions are white students. Research by David Card, an economist at the University of California, Berkeley, states that in 2014, 80% of legacy admits were white students. In 2019, this number is said to have dropped to 61%. In either case, the data shows that those who benefit from legacy admissions are outstandingly white. And though it's known that legacy admissions benefit white students over black students, no one sees this as a problem. People don't randomly say to white students that they only got into a university because of legacy admissions. However, when we think about the discussion surrounding affirmative action, they always seem to suggest that black students are underqualified or only got into a university or college because of their blackness, even though we know that's not true, because research shows that those who benefit from affirmative action are majority white women. Or we can talk about the college admission scandal. White upper-class parents paying to get their children into esteemed universities was met with limited criticism and little consequence. The headlines we saw surrounding the scandal showed empathy. Like Forbes article, why parents in the college admission scandal shouldn't get prison time. Or New York Times article, Felicity Huffman, desperate housewife, devoted parent, and now defendant. But when we look at the instances of Black parents lying about their addresses to allow their children to get a better education outside of the approved boundaries, we don't see that same empathy. When looking at the headlines surrounding Kelly William Buller's case, a Black woman jailed for doing just that, they asked why she didn't explore her other options, like sending her child to charter school or sending her child to a different school within the boundaries. So what do I want you to take away from this talk? This is a question that I thought about for a long time. And honestly, I wish it was something as easy as saying, stop being racist. But it's not. Because racism is quite literally embedded in every institution and system that we interact with. Just today, I've talked about wages, the entertainment industry, criminal justice, the education system. When we think about violence and white supremacy, we have to broaden our scope. Because when we only think about violence as a physical act, we don't allow accountability for the violence caused by our thoughts and interactions. I believe that one of the first steps everyone should take in combating anti-Blackness is supporting Black mediocrity. Stop making Black people think they have to be extraordinary to matter. Being Black is hard enough. When you support Black mediocrity, you're supporting Black liberation and autonomy to just be, rather than existing in a system designed by white people and for whiteness. This goes for those who consume music. White artists don't have to be the best vocalists or dancers, so why should Black artists? This goes for those working in HR. Why is a white person receiving a higher offer than a Black person with the same credentials? This goes for those working in the education system. What's the difference between legacy admissions and affirmative action? And why do you support one and not the other? This goes for those in the judicial system and working in newsrooms. Why are you more critical of Black victims than white perpetrators of violence? We have to be critical of ourselves and the institutions we uphold. But we can't stop there. We have to call out these inconsistencies, and we have to work to build a world where Black people can be just as mediocre as white people. A world where Blackness is allowed to exist and just be. I'm Andre Williams. I support Black mediocrity, and you should too. Thank you.